Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another TTRPG panel. Today, we're talking about doomed stories, play to lose games, doomed heroes, and all that wonderful stuff. And just before we get started, I want to say hi, I'm Anne. I'm assuming you know that if you made it this far, but in case you didn't, welcome. And we now have a Patreon for these panels. So if you enjoy this and you want to see more of it, keep us going and maybe see more shows in this vein, do exclamation Patreon and you can support us and I'll love you forever, you specifically. But enough about that. Let's meet our panelists. So I'm going to go clockwise here. If you guys want to look on the screen and know what order you're coming in so I don't jump scare you. Now, I have a little thing to say to each of you, but then I would like to know if you could recommend me a game that you would consider play to lose and what you like about it. So we're going to start with Zach. So Zachary Cox is the Jelly Muppet and serves as the director of Soul Muppet Publishing. They are the moon-obsessed creator of Paint the Town Red, Inevitable, and Best Left Buried, and one of the co-creators of Orbital Blues. Zach is a seasoned RPG creator and producer who makes ideas into books. They dabble in everything from printing, distribution, and project management, and also hanging out with me here right on the internet. Hi, Zach. Tell me about a good game.
Okay, yeah. So the Play to Lose game I'm going to plug is an older Play to Lose game, and I managed to find a copy of it here in my partner's house. It's Polaris from 2005 by Ben Lehrman. It's a fantastically weird game. It's a GM-less game from 2005, which I think is like before they became popular in my head. You play a bunch of knights trying to stop the destruction of your kind of like icy doomed citadel city from star demons, and it's all about sort of establishing mythology for some sort of past Ragnarok which has already happened. It was a big inspiration for Inevitable, which is my most prominent play to lose game that I wrote, but it's about deserts instead of ice, if that makes sense.
Are there cowboys?
There are
No.
cowboys. Yeah. It's yeah. 100%. Yeah. We'll probably talk about that in a bit.
Okay, thank you. All right, continuing clockwise over to Dare. Dare Hickman is a Black trans writer, editor, and artist in the TTRPG space. You can find Fair over at Dare to Dreaming RPG on all socials and streaming and on Twitch. And one of those places is here on this Twitch right now. Hi, Dare.
Hi.
Do you have a game to recommend me?
Yes. I don't know if it's nepotism, if it's literally me. So I'm going to recommend When the Sun Dies, which is my game that I made a couple years back. Probably my most well-known game that I've made about being a couple of friends going on one last trip or one last ride, knowing the world is going to end in 3 days. It is surprisingly very wholesome, and I'll probably get into it at some point during all of this. Why?
Thank you so much. Okay, continuing clockwise to Kiana. Kiana Shaw is a game writer and narrative designer for TTRPGs and video games, including the Candlekeep Mysteries, Archon, City of Neon Daylight, and is one of the co-creators of the Gold Emmy winning TTRPG Safety Toolkit. Hello, do you have a game recommendation for me?
Hello, I do. It's going to be a classic. It's going to be 10 Candles. If you don't know, 10 Candles is a game where everyone's going to die at the end of it. And it uses the mechanics of literal candles that you get to blow out over the course of the game, or sometimes they just snuff out by themselves to explore the fragile nature of mortality in often very terrible situations. So, classic for a reason. It's very cool.
Fantastic. And last but certainly not least, we have Wes. Wes Franks is a writer, designer, and horror fiend, crafting games like This Old House, The Between Unsinkable, and the forthcoming Dead Pilled. You can find them slinging zines with +1 EXP and burning up airwaves with the Gauntlet Podcast Second Edition. Hi, Wes.
Hi, Anne. Thanks for having me.
Tell me about a cool game.
So I've got a stack of them, and I'm sure we'll talk about all of them or some of them at some point. But there's one that I particularly love, and this is a little game called Butter Princess by Brian Sago. It is rooted in Trophy, so it's based on the Trophy system, Trophy Dark, Trophy Gold, that sort of thing. But it takes place at the Minnesota State Fair. You play a group of people that are going to the Minnesota State Fair, and the thing about the Minnesota State Fair is they have a beauty pageant queen called the Butter Princess, and each of the different Butter Princesses have a bust of butter that's been carved of them, and they have a locker where they display them and everything. And so it's like
That
Ocean's
real?
11. Yeah, that's a real thing.
Your
Yeah.
country's fucked, man.
yeah,
Right.
it is.
You
I
call
was
us Brits weird. I was like, what's a state fair?
Yeah. We're like you put beans on toast, nothing.
Hold
We
on.
got butter busts, but yeah.
I was gonna say the State Fair was the part that got you, not the
Yeah, I mean,
the
I
butter
know those
part.
exist, but like the butter statues, that just seemed pretty standard on the grounds of state fair. Sorry, I should let you talk about your game. Random.
No,
topic
you're great.
afterwards.
No, it's
I
great.
just thought that was, I was like, what a beautiful and creative concept. Then I'm like, wait a second, no, hold on, is that real? Okay,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
tell me more.
But yeah, no, and it's very much Ocean's 11 or like a high style game where you are trying to steal those busts from the butter locker. You're trying to take the butter princesses, and it is play to lose because you are probably going to end up in prison, crushed by a butter bust, or driven off in a paddy wagon, whatever you want to call it. Stark raving mad into the forest, like we all should go. Yeah, so it's great. It's a great time. It's by Brian Sago. It's a beautiful game. It's laid out beautifully. Yeah.
That sounds absolutely fantastic and really sets me up for my next question, which is from all these examples, we have such a wide breadth of different games and themes. All I said was tell me about a play to lose game. So maybe for people who haven't encountered this term before, what do you guys like? And I'm not going to ask you for the authoritative definition. Don't worry. Hey, people on the internet, we're just going to say that that in your opinion, okay, like what when we say play to lose, what are we talking about? What kind of games fit under this umbrella, and what are the themes that make something play to lose? And this is open to anyone who has an idea.
So I think the play to lose structure is like something that rebels from a traditional format of storytelling that we often see in games. When you think about role-playing games, the elephant in the room is Dungeons and Dragons and the lineage of like fantasy stories involving heroes' journeys, where you go into a cave and return with power and the mundane world is abandoned. It's not in that order, but like Myth of the Thousand Faces stuff. And that involves usually like some idea of character progression and some idea of like a quest you are attempting to achieve and something you're trying to like grow as people. And I think play to lose is a subversion of that trope specifically, right? So there's lots of ways it can work out, but the most classic version is that you're trying to emulate some kind of fiction which is not being depicted in that Hero of a Thousand Faces format, right? The two classic examples I can think of are like apocalypse stories where the world is going to end, not post-apocalyptic stories like pre-apocalypse as apocalypse is happening, where you're trying to work out what is happening in like the final days of some period, or horror stories where everyone is going to die, right? So what we're doing is we're working towards a different fixed ending that is different to sort of like a power fantasy progression that is typical in some RPGs. And obviously there's lots more shapes games can take than that, but those are like two really classic examples. It's about taking that curve, that structure, and then turning it on its head and allowing games to be about something else, which is why they're incredibly popular in like indie and story game spaces specifically that are like less interested in traditional in inverted commas RPG storytelling.
Yeah, and just for anyone who isn't familiar with that, when we say the hero's journey, that's a very like a specific structure of story, which is kind of like your Luke Skywalker of like ragtag, gets magic weapon, fights big bad, saves world, and that's the structure that is like really common in these kinds of things. And so when we're saying it's a subversion of that, yeah, I love this. Does anyone else have something to add?
I would love to.
Yeah.
For me, it's at least the way that I tend to square it in my head is the knowledge, sort of the shared knowledge that at the end of this, there will be an intentional loss of something that is important to you. Whether that is for something like when the sun dies, it's the world, it's your life, right? For some games, it is another one that I've written actually. It is a relationship. It's a game based around starting a relationship, sort of falling into something that's like very quick, spontaneous, beautiful, and that ends because you're in a place of impermanence. Like heading into any sort of idea with the knowledge that you're losing something that is pretty important to both this game and the story you're telling, I think for me really signifies that it's a game about loss.
Yeah, those were both very comprehensive, and I have nothing further to add.
Yeah, it's just mostly like, I think the only thing to add is that many of these games have characters with goals that are inherently going to be thwarted in some way or another. Whether that's, getting caught trying to steal butter busts, or whether that's, not being able to stop the apocalypse, or, dying because you're on your journey or whatever. Usually there's a general tension between what the characters want and what is inevitably set as a failure. So there's that too.
Okay, I love this. So I think because I'm talking about like doomed heroes, and I think typically we're thinking of like the world's gonna end or we're all gonna die. But there are so many ways to lose, you know? Ain't that just the way? On that note, my next question is, so when we're talking about games, especially like storytelling games, we often say like play to find out. The story emerges through the game and we discover what's going to happen. But with a lot of these games, as we said, that like Kenna said, it's a fixed outcome. So what are we playing to discover? What are we actually finding out if the ending is preset?
Well, it's the journey, not the destination, right? Because we can know what's going to happen at the end, but all of the steps to get there can always be really important. And I think the follow through there is that it's often really interesting to deal with like different characters who either know or don't know this is going to happen. That's like something we'll probably talk about later. But also different people dealing with loss, of the lose of loss in different ways, right? You know, even though it's been like debunked psychologically, I really like thinking of like how the 5 stages of grief can like affect different players and like what ways different players and characters are going to approach that play to lose situation. There's lots of stuff that can happen between the start and end of a story, just the same as if you know the outcome's going to happen. If anything, the fact that we know what's going to happen as players can make the things that do happen on the way there more interesting.
Yeah, it's all about giving context to what that ending is, right? If we know that all of our characters are going to die, but our characters end up having like seem what to be a great time, that is going to make that death ending have a very different tone and very different narrative, structure than if you have a terrible if your characters have a terrible time on their way there. I I often design games like road trips, where the point is I know where you're going to begin, I know where you're going to end, but the important thing is what you end up hitting on the way there. Like if I present you, hey, we're gonna end up over there, but on the way we could go to that weird diner, or we could go to that like funky ginormous ball of yarn or whatever. That is going to change your journey and your experience of it. So it's a more elaborate way of saying that the journey matters more than the destination ultimately. But it is, for me, that middle part is what makes the endings unique, because even though you know what's going to happen, uh, the stuff in between is what gives it more nuanced, more interesting storytelling stuff happening there.
Yeah, to jump in, I really I play games in a very cinematic approach. That's just film is and television is just it's one of my greatest loves. Everything about it is something that like interests me, and I come when I think about games and their experiences and having like that set point, that set destination and everything, I then think about like when I went to go see a movie with friends at a movie theater, and then when we're walking out and we're talking about what we just saw. And there is typically conversations about the ending, but the conversations that I find the most thrilling is talking about what were our favorite parts, the things that happened in between. And then that I've had that same exact feeling replicated at a table with other people, where it's just we're doing our aftercare, we're doing our post session stars, wishes and feelings, roses and thorns, whatever you want to call it, and whatever process you use, and it's just like a very illuminating feeling to like have those moments and think about them and dwell on them. And so why not have an experience that provides that? Like it feels almost like it just makes sense. It's like a duh, yeah, of course. Like this is a good thing that for some people to experience. So why not make it something that's replicated at our tables? Also, I'm old. I guess I'm not old. I'm middle-aged now. I turned 33 next month, but like,
Wait a second.
yeah, I know,
Yeah, that's not
I know,
middle-aged,
I
Rob.
know,
That's,
I know.
that's
For America, that's middle-aged, but you know,
The lifespan of 60.
exactly, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I don't know. I was in the service industry, so, but I don't have a lot of time for things. I'm a contract worker. I work in publishing. I am constantly just like being shown horrors on my like this thing, and so like having a long-term campaign that is never ending sounds great, but I only have one of those in me at any given time. And so having games like this where I have an endpoint and I know that there's a set destination and everything, that's such a relief, because I can look at a group of people and I can say, this is what I need you for. I need you for this many dates, and can you do it? And we all say, yeah, okay, let's do it. Let's have a great time. Like, I don't know.
Well, that brings me beautifully to my next question, which was, how does having an end condition for the game affect the story and gameplay? So in a lot of games, the end condition is when I can no longer convince my friends to come together and play because our schedules have become so misaligned. But sometimes in these games, the end condition is in the game itself. And so how does that affect the gameplay and the story that we're telling?
I'd love to go if that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. So for me, it's something I very intentionally design with my games. I am a sucker for a 3-act structure, because great way to set stuff up so things move at a relatively good pace, especially for a game like mine that's designed to end in one session. So for me, it is a very much set in the way of like, we have 3 major points we're going to hit, combined with the ending and one moment of reflection right before, like I call it the last 8 minutes in my game, right? For that final like blast of heat from the sun to hit the rest of the planet. I slapped the shit out of my microphone. I'm sorry. But like for that like last moment, that gives every character a few minutes left to like sort of reflect, have a vignette, have one last like longing look at another person there. Sort of brings home everything that everyone has done. And I think that is a very, I find it a very both like loving and meaningful way to send this like little journey we had, because I think a game with the knowledge of loss means it can get really personal into playing in some stuff uh, very like quickly, because I think confronting loss is a thing that's going to pull a good amount of like honesty and sincerity out of you. It's hard to do that like and try to play coy like you don't care. So giving that last little moment for everyone to look at each other and just sort of go like, I'm glad we did this, in like the weird messed up little way that it is. At least in the games I tend to design and the style of loss I tend to go for is really my jam, and I think it's really meaningful.
Yeah, I think often you end up with much tighter games. You end up, as Wes mentioned, it's like you end up with usually shorter things, you usually end up with a lot of these are like one shots or a couple shots. And part of that is because you can see the end in sight, you have something to work towards, which is not always the case for games that are meant to be more open-ended as how they end. Because you have that goal in sight, not only are you able to push the game momentum towards that, both as a player and also when you're designing the game, you're also able to build in a specific kind of dramatic irony in the storytelling, because you as the player, in some sense, know what the ending's going to be, and so all of the moments leading up to that, you can start really leading into like, hey, we know we're all going to die, so I'm going to start off this romance with this person, because it's going to be even more ouchies later when one of us dies. But a lot of it, at least trending in most of the play to lose games that I know, and I can go off the top of my head, there is a leaning into that structure of disseminating the storytelling into the, even if there is a GM, it also into the player's hands and into that collaborative process. That is a little different than one where the GM has all of via control, or really the game mechanics as it goes just kind of keeps going rather than going somewhere. So that's what I would say. I think you are muted.
Yeah, Zach, you're muted.
Yeah, the best part, thank you everyone, of these kind of games is that pacing as a GM and a player is really hard, right? Especially if you're like working on what some trad games promise, which is endless crescendo, right? Of level increasing, bigger monster, number go up. Like, if you're working in a play to lose game with a fixed endpoint, what you have is a incredibly tight and intuitive structure that builds itself with pacing managed into it. Your climax already exists. You just have to work out your setup, build up, climax, and it means you can like time all of these things much more eloquently, which means play to lose games are like incredibly suited towards one shot or fixed campaign play in a way that is like sometimes quite difficult to manage correctly in a traditional game. So it's actually easier sometimes to write and run a play to lose game than it is something which is more expansive, because the game and its structures and its tools and its mechanics and its pacing are doing a lot of that work for you. So I actually think, controversially, play to lose games are like an incredibly good place to start for a GM.
I wanted to add to that too. Now you're actually on the panel, Wes. You talk.
Oh no, I just wanted to say, like, I just wanted to echo what Zach just said. Is that like when I hear people say, "Oh, you want to play RPGs for the first time? Well, you should play D&D or something like that." I recoil, and that's not because I don't like the game systems or anything like that. It is because a game. I'm never going to throw a kid into the deep end of the pool to make them swim. That's how I learned how to swim. It's not a sound tactic, but like we got through it. But like there's other games like Trophy Gold here, where they have these set structures. They have rings. Each incursion has a ring, and there is a timer. There are certain things that occur within the game mechanics that will trigger the next ring to happen no matter what. And so the entire incursion and like this entire book is set up to where it flows from one section to another, where it's like, this is how you start. This is the next section. This is the next thing that you need to know. This is the next thing you need to know. And so you can put this entire book in somebody's hand and you can say, I want you to read this. I want you to run something from it. And then I want to see how confident you feel about running something afterwards. And like these games that have like these set endings and everything like that, there's so much built in for a person that might get overwhelmed with a massive toolkit like all of D&D, no matter the edition. Like I imagine throwing all those books at somebody and saying have fun, and then I would just cry.
If I, oh, so
Yeah, Dare,
sorry.
go ahead.
The one thing I want to add, which I feel like we might end up touching on later, is I also really do love the idea of people learning from things that aren't D&D. The correct amount of shade for D&D, depending on who you are as a person. But I really think that when you start there as your like space of game design or like and just running games, it kind of can be a little bit limiting versus like when you start with things that are a less traditional, more indie space. Because I think you learn to rely on your table much more for storytelling and design. And like you end up teaching and like playing a lot more like communicative than I think D&D is like kind of meant or kind of like designed to teach you how to play and how to run it as a GM. So I just wanted to add that little 2 cents.
Yeah, one thing I talk a lot about with my community is like different motivations to play games. And the people I tend to roll with are really in it for story, right? When I hope this isn't controversial in this room, but we think D&D doesn't offer you very many storytelling tools. Actually, it relies on you just having those in your pocket from somewhere else in the world, versus the scaffolding provided by these other games. And I think from what you were saying about like how it really like leads you to water in terms of telling a compelling, powerful story very quickly, which is something that's really hard to do and something that's really hard to learn, especially for those of us who like say haven't studied like screenwriting or something like, you know what I mean? Like it's like such a cool tool to learn that skill, which I think is a skill that you develop through playing these games, and then could maybe port elsewhere. Speaking of player motivations, this brings me to my next question. So if y'all want to spit off that, but there are so many different reasons that people play games. We have different play styles, and how do we get the buy-in from the people, or should we even try to get buy-in from people whose like main joy in the game is like overcoming obstacles and triumphing and saving the day? Like, can I convert the dungeon crawlers to play these games? And how would this affect? Like, how does this model affect how we tell the story as opposed to something that's like a tactical combat game?
I always use Halo Reach as an example when I'm talking to video game people that who don't play TTRPGs often, or they just play D&D. That game has a set ending. You're going to lose at the end. If you know the Halo lore, if you read those books when you were young like I was and everything, you know all about it. But like, it was a bad thing that happened. A lot of people died. It was a loss. And you're experiencing that in the campaign mode. And I always use that as an entry point, like a frame of reference, as like, remember how you felt doing that. You were a last stand. You're fighting to the last person. You're going to die no matter what. Doesn't that feel epic? Don't you want to feel that at a table, at a game that doesn't cost $60 or $70? That's a great. I'm typically using sales pitches at conventions for zines, so that's my frame of reference. But like, no, like I like. And having like the endless options provided to you with what that come with role playing and improv role playing games, I think like having your cake and eating it too is something that comes to mind when it comes to those kind of experiences, and just finding a frame of reference for somebody to hook them onto is tried and true tactic. I say tactic because you are trying to convert people. Absolutely.
I'm a person who has always argued that the best way to get someone to play a new game with you is to get them to show up and then start them playing a new game. Just lie a little bit, just bring some games. Like, if anybody only wants to play Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or Call of Cthulhu or Mouse Ritter or whatever it is, right? Then if they're actually friends with you and not friends with Dungeons and Dragons, then they will play the games you are excited to run as the GM. Or you can propose, hey, I've got this sad thing we want to do, and I've got this type of game which is really suited for a one-shot because of all of the reasons we're interested in. And it'll give us a really nice story. And like, ultimately bring games you are excited about to people and your enthusiasm will be infectious to them because they are your friends. And if they only want to play certain types of games with you, then find cooler people, frankly. But that's my like mean take. Maybe I'm blessed in living in a big town with lots of nerds in
Yeah,
it.
no. Everyone clip this. Illustrious game designer Zachary Cox says, lie to your friends, and if they don't like it, get new friends.
Yeah.
And I agree.
Honestly.
Yeah. Like, sorry, I'm such a I've really had lots of moments where like I've realized halfway through my campaign that like the things that the people I was playing with didn't like games, they liked like a specific game. And that is like, that's fine. They're allowed to do that. But if you want to play something different, then there's going to be people in the place you are who are going to want to play fun games. And if not, go to a game store and like try to chat with some people there, or find an RPG club, because there will be one in the place you live. And bringing them new and interesting things is exciting.
I'd like to jump off of that energy, if that is cool. From like the idea of like, yeah, if people are your friends and they're willing to like try something new, that always is good. For me, I also rely on games that are very open in terms of setting. That can be another really good way of convincing people to start. Which is just like, oh, hey, you like something fantasy. This game lets you experience the idea of like loss, death. We can flavor it towards fantasy because it's open-ended with that way. That like the core of this is the same. Core of the car is the same. You just design the paint job. Like all of that is fine. For me specifically, like I've had versions of some of the games that I've ran, or just like games around loss, been styled as steampunk, a like regular slice of life day, or like in deep space, and the same core things can be pulled out of all of those, because certain games are designed with that openness of setting. So that's always another great way that I tend to talk to people, to be like, hey, try this weird fucking game, try this weird freak game, trust me.
I think that's a great insight too, because especially with people who aren't like soaked in the discourse like I am, they're not necessarily even thinking about design and mechanics so much as like genre and story, and so like just bait and switch.
Yeah, I speak to people based off of references, right? You can be like, hey, like for example, do you want to play Halo, but as the tabletop, right? Or you can go, hey, do you like these horror movies? Here's a great game that does this, or being able to speak to what they're interested in is good. It's also a really good idea if you're playing with people who really like triumphant moments and stuff, is to go into why they like that, because I don't think that triumphant moments and play to lose games are mutually exclusive. I think you can have triumphant moments along the way and still land on what is essentially a loss, but you still get to have those cool moments, like a story where you're having your last stand against a great evil. Is still really powerful as a story, and still really interesting for people who might be interested in triumphing over stuff. There's a game that I'm thinking of. I think it's called Prequel or something like that. I'd have to go double check in a moment. Where you play basically an earlier era of a fantasy world's history, essentially, and you play as the first people who try to defeat the great evil. You are going to lose, but your battle here will set up success for the future. Will set up for the future heroes, and so there's still stuff there that you can play around with. I don't think that they're technically mutually exclusive, but you really have to figure out why your friends, if you're trying to convert your friends, why your friends are interested and enjoy that type of stuff, because they're like, well, I don't want to have a sad ending. That's different than I like the power fantasy of being the shit out of something, because those can sometimes play nice with play to lose stuff.
So
yes, thank you, thank you for the link, Sam. That is exactly pretty cool. So yeah, that's also a really great game. If you want to try that out, and I think it's a good introduction for people who are more used to playing big heroic fantasy fantasy games to get them into Play to Lose, because they are going to lose, but in the meta, essentially, they still get to win in a way. It's cool.
I think it's worth mentioning in the context of like talking about Play to Lose games that it is not, even though we've decided what's going to happen at the end and we think we know it's going to happen, that path there is something which is intended usually to have opportunities for players to succeed and be wonderful and be heroic, because like ultimately these games are about desperate situations where we know the outcome is inevitable, but the characters sometimes don't, and their hope and their desperation is the driving point for drama within this context, right? And if there was no possibility of success and it was doomed from the output and everything was always going to fail and it doesn't matter what you do and it's a useless downward trundle, then there would be no drama and no interest, right? Hope and the understanding that it is ultimately pointless is something that drives the story in this context. Within like the game I talked about at the start, Inevitable, which is my like biggest Play to Lose game. The format of it is that you play a group of knights and wizards in service to the King of Myth, which within the setting is like a sort of Arthurian-esque court of fantasy Western characters. The apocalypse is coming and your civilization is going to be destroyed, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. But it doesn't mean you're not going to fight battles and slay dragons and find wizards and have gunfights on horseback, like in a way that is possible for you to like win all these things. What the kind of it is about is this grinding set of apocalyptic misfortune happening around you. And even as your characters are this point of light where things can go as well for you as they can, everything is still going to fall apart around you. And the mechanics are set up to force that drama. So you can still have these characters who are like motivated and competent and capable of doing shit, but still have that story reach that fixed position at the end. So it's not like there's no path for any failure to be inevitable from the start, even though it is.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that brings up like on a lot of the questions we got submitted, a lot of the questions were specifically about hope. Because and I'm tempted to merge questions here, but I won't do it. So when we're talking about these things where we above the table know that we're doomed, how do these games bring in the themes of hopes? And do you have advice for like the storytellers at the table for how to incorporate hope when the outcome is predetermined and to find joy in these sort of like doom narratives?
Yeah, I think that comes from when I think of like a lot of the media or the games that I've experienced where it's play to lose and things are going to be dire and hopeless. I think you have that's when like storytelling tools and like narrative tools come into focus. I know Kiana brought up dramatic irony. But there's things of that nature that you can utilize where you can show that there's going to be a glimmer of something. Your characters might not necessarily make it, but something is going to be changed for the better. There's a game. I got another prop. This is by Adam Voss of World Champ Game Co. It's called 1978. The Night They Came Home. This is Halloween the game. This is a box that is John Carpenter's Halloween, and one player plays the Michael Myers type killer, and the other one plays or the Shape, and the other one plays Laurie. You play the survivor, the final girl, and you work together. It's like a push and pull system. You work together. Inevitably, this person is going to come and come to your town and kill a bunch of people and is going to come after you, and you're probably going to die, or you're going to make it, depending on how things go. But there's not going to be without any loss. You're going to be injured, gravely injured. You're going to have everybody you know die. You're going to have prom ruined. There's there's going to be a bunch of awful things that happen to you, but you might survive at the end of it. Or you might have taken this thing out, whatever it is, this person, whoever it is, and you've saved other people, that kind of thing. And the game lets you sit in that as well before sweeping it off of like the rug out from under your feet with the whole like sequel, like, yeah, he's going to come back. Like Freddy comes back, Jason comes back, that whole thing.
Spoilers.
Spoilers. Yeah. You know, never mind the franchises and everything like that and the merchandising. But no, like, yeah, I think there's ways that you can bake it into the mechanics as well, and utilizing the mechanics, and you can find games that have those mechanics built in as well. People are getting very, very clever and creative with mechanics they put in these kinds of games.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna pull the trigger for the thing I talked about pre the show. I often think about when it comes to the idea of finding joy in something, knowing that tragedy is still waiting at the end. I'm going to refer to a quote about the Star Wars show Andor for about 2 seconds, where the showrunner did describe this, and it's like never left my head since I first heard it, which is, we are all living in a prequel. We are all going to die. That sounds deeply like macabre, but it is like an inherent truth of this world. And we find joy every day. And I think that is an important part of designing and working with these games. Like, I made a game that is entirely about having a road trip with your friends where you are catching a vibe, despite the knowledge that this world is going to end. And you've known it for a year. So you have already given yourself the time to just kind of give up for a little bit. And you do the thing that people always naturally do, which is get back to it, because you got stuff to do until then. Even if the stuff isn't working, it's hanging out with people you love. It is finding joy in the little things. It is in giving into a hobby one more time. And I think that is part of the fun. Especially, I'm a sucker for romance in games. I'm going to fall in love in every fucking game I can if I get a chance. So there is joy in finding those moments of connection in the end, right before it's going to go. There is joy in celebrating something as small as you guys managed to get a little bit more water and gas in your car, despite it being the apocalypse. There is always some beauty in that. And I naturally tend to find that just as a player and designer. I speak to those moments. But I think people want to have happy moments no matter what. So I feel like people are just going to find those pretty naturally.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add there. Like I had said earlier, what you do during the game will give new context to the ending. And so having those moments of hope is going to provide a new context for that ending. Even if you know that it's going to be bad and terrible, it is the ability to go and have those moments of brightness that can really change things. I play a lot with this, and I have a couple of games where you are going to die, and that is set out from the very start, or as your character is in the process of dying. I have one that's called Come Home, where you it's a round role game where it's an astronaut dying in space, and it's ground control and the stars vying for where the astronaut is going to rest for eternity. And the whole structure of the game has the astronaut reminiscing about either moments back on Earth or moments out in their exploration of space. And those are all meant to be these beautiful, hopeful, nostalgic moments. These scenes of little flashbacks. And because of the context that it is against the inevitable death of this astronaut that is floating in space, those hopeful moments get way more meaning, get way more poignancy, and vice versa. The end, that death, where I have the last prompting questions of like, hey, so where does the astronaut end up going after they die? All those hopeful moments in between have provided the guidance for what those answers are going to be. The ending's the same. Astronaut's going to die, but hope is, I think, pretty core to Play to Lose. Even if it's just the characters hoping that they win, even if you as the player don't hope for good moments, there's some element where, you know, if you just go deep on a spiral, it's just going to be one note, as mentioned before. So yeah, I think they are important to have, and they come out naturally, as Dara said.
I love the notion too, because part of what I love about tabletop role-playing games as storytelling devices is the way like the constraints prompt creativity. Like the rules and the mechanics, in a weird way, having more boundaries, I feel like makes people more creative. But I think these kinds of stories are really interesting because it's like a narrative constraint as opposed to like a traditional like mechanical one of like what you can and can't do. It's like a narrative boundary that leaves us almost more room to therefore be creative in how we explore the space in between it and like push against it, which I think is really exciting for me as a story nerd. And I'm going to use that because this has been brought up a few times now, and Kenna just brought it up, which is the gap between player knowledge and character knowledge. So we've talked about dramatic irony, which is when the people, traditionally like the audience knows what's going to happen, but the people in the story don't. Of course, this time you are both audience and author within RPGs. So, and now it's not true of all of the games, but in a lot of these games, we, the players, know that our characters are doomed. The characters themselves do not know they are doomed, although we have had quite a few examples, they know. They know. But say for the ones that they don't, how do we manage that gap between the two, and how do we avoid metagaming or kind of like exploring that gap?
I mean, what I'd say for this is that I wouldn't worry about it too much, because in the context of film, I think quite regularly the audience knows what is going to happen at the end of the film, whether at the start of the film. So effectively, unless you're like watching an M. Night film where you know there's going to be a twist, so really the twist isn't a twist, you're going to know what's going to happen the whole way through. So just don't worry about metagaming too much. If anything, use metagaming to make things juicier. Like genre, which I think is good. Genre's good. Hot take. Second hot take of the evening.
Is that hot?
Means that's hot. That's such a hot take. Genre is good.
Okay.
Means that you know what genre conventions are, and you're going to play and roll with those genre conventions, and that is the same as knowing you're going to lose in a Play to Lose game.
There's something that I love about the Card from Brindlewood system that has this tech in it that's called Branches. That's like the name of it. But in the Between, which is a gothic horror game in Victorian London, they're called masks. And if you get a die result you don't like, you can put on a mask. You mark a mask. There is a narrative prompt that's related to your backstory or something that's happening during like the at present that you'll narrate and we'll learn about. And then you get to bump your roll result up. These are your health points, though. These masks are your health points because once you run out of them, you have to retire your character. The last one you can mark is one that retires your character. But you can also mark that whenever you want to, if you want your character to just kick the bucket immediately. And I love especially like pairing that with a vulnerable move or something. Just something that incentivizes a little bit of narrative, just dialogue between two characters. It provides a reward almost for you are losing a health point, but we are learning your backstory. So we're learning a bit more about your character, and it's in a measured and controlled way. And so that kind of I don't want to say it's smoke and mirrors. It's a distraction. It's like, pay attention to this hand while this hand's actually doing all the work. But like what it is doing is it's a salve. It's a balm for losing some health points. You get to tell us about this little Blorbo little thing that you've created, and like you're going to put through so much pain and suffering. And so like I really love having games that package that a little bit to help kind of ease over that gap.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't have much to say. But this is one of the things where your table super helps. I am a person who loves being dramatic and sharpening the knife that I'm going to stab myself with as a character. And most of the people I tend to play games with are also that same type of person. We love the dramatic irony. We love leaning into these things, knowing that it might not fully work, or like leaning into the idea of, oh, these two people are building something closer. In a game of masks, like the like Powered by the Apocalypse game. Recently, I just had like a whole WandaVision style arc where we're all in a world that was kind of a dream, and the characters don't know that this is going to collapse around them. We as players did, so we absolutely leaned into giving our characters some of the happiest stuff they could, knowing that's going to be ripped away, and seeing what's going to be born out of what comes out of that is going to be some of the fun for the next thing. And with some of these games, these people are not coming back, obviously, but that is stuff that can inspire you for new characters and new types of stories you're going to tell going forward.
Yeah, metagaming good. Talking with figuring out what the tension is between what you want to do as players and what the characters want. Very fun. Do more of that. Just overall. I think obviously in Play to Lose, but in many other games, I think it really benefits from having that communication and a collaborative foundation across the board, to be able to then go, all right, let's figure out what is most fun, knowing what we know and knowing that the characters don't know exactly what they're brought up, exactly what was fun. It's that's what it is. Yeah, metagaming is good. Metagaming is good for story.
Metagaming bad if you like read the dungeon to check where all the secret rooms are ahead
Yes.
of time, or how many hit points an Aboleth has, or what the
Yeah.
clues are in this Brindlewood Bay mystery before the GM has told you what they are.
Yes.
But knowing what genre is
knowing
good
what a genre is,
sometimes.
knowing what the genre is, knowing what the overall story vibes are, and that's just storytelling. That's just good storytelling and collaboration.
Yeah, it's like when the metagaming is part of the game itself, it's not even metagaming anymore, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's like you were doing stuff above the table, and then we kind of expanded the game and absorbed that into the game. That's ours too now. And it just kind of keeps going like that. I think that's really fun. I have now this like notion in my head that there's like a critical mass of meta knowledge where it's like once you have a certain amount of meta knowledge, it's not meta knowledge anymore. It's just knowledge, and it's like in the game sort of like. I think that's really fun. Okay, our last question. These are, and because I can't let Kiana go anywhere without answering a question about safety tools. That is the law, actually. I will be arrested if I let them out of here. So, how do safety tools are different when we're intentionally telling a story about a doomed character or a doomed world? And we, what can we do to, keep that the players comfortable, even if the story's quite intense?
I mean, I can step into this immediately. I'll have Tom one like
Yes, jump on this grenade.
Really, again, all safety tools and systems for establishing safety at the table are there to make it easier to set expectations, set boundaries, and figure out how to navigate those. A lot of play to lose games are great because they are upfront with what the game is going to be about, and so you have half of that work set up already, where you can be like, oh, this game's going to be about death and dying. We can put that as foundational, line of rail, and that can be, an immediate way of talking about, hey, how do we want to approach death and dying? Or if someone's not into that, that's very easy to go, okay, not the game for us. Let's do something else. Overall, I don't think safety tools and safety structures and stuff change fundamentally. They just make it so that it's a little bit easier in a way to, as game designers, figure out how to put those directly in. Because again, like I said, there's a foundational already understanding and expectation that is set of, hey, bad things are going to happen. So it is important to, have those conversations and have that upfront and to work it through. But yeah, it doesn't change that much for me, at least.
You to be tremendously important to making sure that everyone at the table is safe and happy. And the advantage here is, as Kiana said, you know often some of the stuff that's going to happen and the themes you're going to be dealing with, which makes not only using safety tools, but picking out the ones that are most appropriate for the type of game you want to do. Because obviously there's lots of different tool sets available. Try not to, plug anyone's content while we're here. We're firmly pro use the safety toolkit and many other things. But it's important to understand that there's really nothing special about this type of game when it comes to this space. They are as important as they ever were. And I feel like I had something to add, and I just ended up repeating everything Kiana said while nodding, because that's what you do when talking with safety consultants. You repeat what they say while nodding. So,
I also agree and would like to nod and contribute, but I just want to say, from my experience of playing games in the times I felt most unsafe was when I was in a comedic game and then got jump scared by something I wasn't expecting. And so even having the pre-established expectation of the game is already the first safety tool of opening with, hey, this is a game where you're gonna die, is actually almost in itself a safety tool of where we're all getting on board with this at the outset. We don't have to negotiate it halfway through. We don't have to negotiate it once we're in the sauce. It's at the top, which I really like, actually.
By reading the blurb of the game, you have already effectively gone through step one of a cat's tool set, right? Which is which people who's not familiar, I'm now going to forget what the acronym is for, but going through the content and the themes and the stuff right at the start, and the A's and the S's as well. Someone help me out.
Concept, aim, tone, and subject matter.
Yeah.
Which is it's a writing room thing. It's a writer's room thing from television.
When we're playing a game with a set ending and tools to help us get there, by explaining how the rules of the game works, you've actually just you've gone through quite a bit of tone establishing safety tool stuff, right? So yeah, thanks for backup, Wes.
Yeah,
I've got you.
I was just gonna say, I think part of this is, there's an intentionality that comes with choosing a game like this. You don't trip into loss in a game built around it. So I think that inherent intention of tone, or not even intention of tone, but intention of knowing this one very core element is going to be there, is going to inform a lot of how people are wanting to navigate and play in this space. Because I have people who, when it's a game that is oh, I might be interested in this, and then as you get more and more into the weeds, as you put a lot of time in, then they start to go, oh, this is the thing that I've now realized isn't for me, and we've been here for a little bit, which is not a problem. But in a game that loss is step one, that's in the title, it's going to turn away, I think, the people who are gonna maybe have a bit more issues with that just off the rip, and that can be really, really helpful for the safety aspect of it.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And that is going to bring us to time. But don't worry, you're going to hear all their beautiful voices once more as I'm going to ask you all to do a sign off. Tell the audience who you are, where they can find you, if you have anything cool coming up that you want them to know about. And we're going to go in the opposite order as last time. So we're going to start over with Wes. Who are you? Where can we find you? What are you doing?
Hi, my name is Wes Franks. My pronouns are they, them. I do a lot of stuff. I have games and a whole YouTube of stuff that I used to do with actual play, and there's more stuff with that coming out. You can find that all on my website, carrion-comfort.com. Conveniently, that is also how you get to my Blue Sky. So like it's the same handle. It's really easy, so you can't mess that up. But on my website, you can find a place that links to my store where you can find a bunch of my digital stuff. You can find my physical stuff on Plus One EXP. That's like This Old House, which is my House of Cards building game where you build a house and then it falls apart, and then you talk about how the house destroyed or how you lost the house. It's very sad, but also very like it has those little bits of joy in it. And also, you can find me on the Gauntlet Podcast Second Edition over on the Gauntlet through their Patreon feed. You can find me with Plus One on the Zine Fiend. I will be at Gen Con at booth 449. If you want to come talk to me about more of these games, or if you would come buy some of these games, come talk to me. And then finally, last but not least, I have a game coming out this year called Dead Pilled. You play a bunch of Manosphere influencers that get brutally murdered by a slasher called the Blue Fairy. And it's great. And it's going to be coming out through the Gauntlet Publishing. So stay tuned and pay attention to that.
So good. Okay, next, Kiana.
Hi everyone, I'm Kiana. You can find me everywhere as at Kiana S. And I'm literally mean everywhere. That is Blue Sky, that is Twitch, that is my website, that is Itch. I mean, if you follow me on Itch, you will not see this face. Instead, you will see me as a goose, because I am a goose tuber. So very different vibe than most of my games, which are usually pretty sad or about dying or about space. Speaking of, in terms of projects, I've currently got a couple of games about revenge that I have been in development with. I have Blood on My Name if you like stuff like Kill Bill or John Wick. And I have The Devil They Buried if you like the idea of being a revenant cowboy who is going to take revenge on the crew that betrayed you. So those are kind of currently either going into next editions or are in like alpha phase essentially. So if you want to go check this out, check them out on my itch.io. Otherwise, I just pop up on the internet somewhere, and I will say words or make a game and then go disappear again. So go find me in one of the many places that I have my handle at.
Just if you turn off the lights and say her name 3 times into the mirror, she will appear.
I will appear 50-50 on whether it's as an astronaut goose or as this form. You got to play the gambling on that.
Thank you so much. Next we have Dare.
Hi, hey, and hello. My name is Dare. Pronouns she, they, they, it. I think that's all of them. You can find me pretty much anywhere on the internet at Dare to Dream RPG. That is DARE, the number 2, DREAM RPG. The brand is strong and consistent. You can find me on Blue Sky, Tumblr, Bandcamp, Itch. I also make music, and like I'm a poet and like 17 other things. You can find me on Twitch, where I just am a variety streamer. Currently, I've been playing Date Everything and Uma Musume, Pretty Derby, the anime horse racing game. But in terms of projects, I am currently on Issues podcast. You can find that on Spotify. It is just a mass campaign where I am a problem because I'm bad. I like to cause problems on purpose, if you cannot tell. And I don't know, keep an eye on Itch. I make games pretty much whenever the mania takes me. That's the beauty of being bipolar and a game designer. But I have a couple in the works, including one about falling in love over a variety of lifetimes. So just, keep an eye on me for that.
Thank you so much. And then we have Zach.
I do just want to clarify before I start. I was shaking my head at Pretty Derby in a complimentary way. You're all good there. Hello everybody. My name is Zach. I have been your Jelly Muppet this evening. I run an RPG company called Soul Muppet Publishing, where we make sad, usually gay games that are probably play to lose, but not always. We will also be at Gen Con. We are at booth number 1361, if you're lucky enough to be there. And yeah, we're available all over the internet, making games like Inevitable, Paint the Town Red, Orbital Blues, and our new game, which is coming out crowdfunding soon, is called Doom Spiral, and it is a Dark Souls game that is about trying to stop the end of the world. But it's not really play to lose. It is just like get big and kill God, which I think is the other way to respond to a play lose game, killing God. But yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much. And I'm Anne. I'm a TTRPG content creator. I'm also in your walls and also everywhere. You can't avoid me. If you have enjoyed this panel, please say in chat, thank you, Sam. Sam at Sam's Eyes is our producer who makes all this thing happen. And if you really like this show, exclamation Patreon, support us to keep it going. And if you really, really like this show, make sure to come by next month where we are going to be talking about bleed in games, when the feelings leave the table and how we can, what it means, when it's okay, when we want to avoid it, all that fun stuff. Thank you so much, panelists, for being here. Thank you so much, chat, for all your incredibly insightful comments. I promise I was reading them. And for all the people who submitted questions, what a wonderful time. So on that note, it's time for us to say goodbye. It was inevitable. Goodbye, friends.
Goodbye.